Hello, everyone, and welcome to the virtual interactive session on manufacturing now, next, and beyond. My name is Anvita Pillai. I'm the sub-editor at Publish Industry India, and I shall be your host for today. A little about our company. Publish Industry India is the 100% subsidiary of Publish Industry Germany that publishes industrial magazine Efficient Manufacturing and Automation and Digitization. For more information, you can visit our website www.industar.com. Um, so, um, Manufacturing today is at a crucial juncture of change. With the pandemic and the nuances attached to it, Manufacturing 4.0 has become all the more crucial to keep businesses up and running effectively. Manufacturing of all sizes in both discrete and process will now need to understand and embrace the potentials of evolving production models, materials, and technology. In today's session of Manufacturing Now, Next, and Beyond, Publish Industry India, in association with event partner Altair and technology partner Siemens Industry Software, our speakers and panelists will discuss the changing face of manufacturing, how India can be self-sufficient, and the breakthrough changes expected in manufacturing operations in the coming years. To give a brief agenda for the sessions today would begin with a keynote session addressed by Dr. Jairam Varadraj. He's the managing director at LG Equipments. This would be followed by a technology presentation by Mr. Sudhir Padaki, the director, data analytics at Altair. Then a guest speech by Mr. Gautam Sivabalan, senior director, manufacturing and process consulting practice, Frost and Sullivan. And this would be followed by a technology presentation by Mr. Nitin Malwadkar, country technical manager, mainstream engineering, Siemens Industry Software, and a panel discussion on manufacturing now, next, and beyond, moderated by Mr. Shekhar Jitkar, chief editor at Publish Industry India. And the panelists would include Ms. Arundhati Thomas, managing director at Plasma Technologies, Mr. Hitendra N. Mishra, the senior vice president and head EEC, Asia Engineering Components and VE Commercial Vehicles, Mr. Ashutosh Athayale, Senior Vice President, Technology and Business Development, Sigma Electric Manufacturing Corporation, and Mr. Chandrasekhar Bharti, the Managing Director, ACE Micromatic MIT, and member National Manufacturing Council. Now, before we begin, I have some instructions for our speakers and our audience. I would request the speakers to keep their mics and videos off until their names have been announced and use earphones during the sessions to ensure audio clarity. Also, please make sure you stick to your session timings and try and end your session within 2 to 3 minutes at spare so that there is enough time in hand for the Q&A. In case you exceed from your stipulated timing, I'll be informing you of the same by the end of your session time. And for our audience, in case you have any questions for our speakers, you can type it out in the Q&A box, which is located at the bottom of your screen. At the end of each session, we will be directing your questions to the speakers. Now, for the keynote address, I would like to invite Dr. Jairam Varadraj, the Managing Director, LG Equipments. Over to you, Dr. Jairam.
Thank you very much. Good evening. It's my pleasure to be with all of you this evening. Thank you for inviting me to participate in this webinar. So before I commence, under these trying times, I hope you and yours are well and safe. In the context of the topic of this webinar, I would like to step back a little bit and understand what are some of the lessons that we have learned or we are continuing to learn in the presence of this crisis that we are facing. There are plenty of transactional lessons, whether it's the issue with migrant labor, the safety of our employees, how to deal with these kinds of shocks in the future. These are transactional, and I would like to, I'm sure that every one of you is well qualified to deal with them. I would like to talk a little bit about the structural lessons that we have learned. And maybe in that context, there are many structural lessons, but I would like to focus on two of them. One thing that this crisis has presented to us, especially in Indian manufacturing industry, is our dependence on one economy, namely our domestic Indian market. Now, if you had the opportunity to be playing all over the world, then the context and the challenges would have been very different as we go through this crisis. Now, the topic of the seminar is kind of provocative in the sense that it talks about India being self-sufficient, and that's a theme that's been making the rounds in various quarters. I would like to examine this whole concept of self-sufficiency in a slightly broader platform. Now, we've got to be very careful because self-sufficiency is a double-edged sword. Now, wind back to the economic situation in our country post-independence. The whole industrial development of India post-independence was based on the principle of self-sufficiency. Now, we all know that led us down the wrong path. The self-sufficiency was about protecting Indian industry, it was about creating huge entry barriers for others to come and participate. There was the licensing system, which kind of stifled competition. As a consequence, the industry really didn't develop. And more importantly, consumers suffered. Basically, consumers and all of us as manufacturers provided substandard products or dated products. And that was really not good for the country. It was not good for the citizens of this country. And the whole transformation happened in the 90s when India started opening up and dismantled all the licensing system. And you can see the kind of transformation that has happened in the country. And I think when we talk about self-sufficiency, we need to ensure that we don't go back or rewind and go back to the earlier concept of what self-sufficiency was all about. The second thing about self-sufficiency is that, it's about building in the context of self-sufficiency in the current era that we're talking about. It's about building world-class, not necessarily substandard products, but world-class products. Now, to build world-class products, it requires a lot of competence, technology, processes, investment in hardware, engineering, a whole gamut of things that is at a very high standard compared to when you're making products just for the Indian market. Now, if you look at the world today, it's a highly interconnected world. And I think we need to talk about self-sufficiency as a concept within the context of that interconnected world. And we need to be very careful that, the business that we architect in this context is not something that is relevant and that's competitive globally. Now, the second structural lesson that I would like to talk about is the fundamental value proposition of each of our businesses. Now, when you talk about self-sufficiency in the context of being world-class, and it takes a lot of time and effort to build that, there's really no need for us to be self-sufficient by focusing on the Indian market. We need to be talking about global opportunities. And in most of our products, the global opportunity is exponentially higher than the Indian opportunity. Now, in order for us to leverage it, we have to be very careful about how do you build the central value proposition of the business in terms of what is it that is going to make you win. Now, so far, in most of our businesses, we have done a labor arbitrage. It doesn't matter. It's not just IT. In almost all the industries that we operate in India, it's about labor arbitrage. We make products by virtue of low factor costs. We make them cheaper. And therefore, we have been doing business internationally by giving price as the value proposition. Now, that's a window, no doubt. It's a window that's open for us. We should use that window. But I think on our own, we should close that window. I think what we need to do in terms of building that world-class organization is about being able to play in the center of the opportunity globally, not in the periphery where we work with cheaper products or a lower cost product. We need to look at value proposition beyond price. We've got to look at what is the customer's fundamental value proposition. That, of course, it includes price, but it has to be a lot more. Like in our business, the value proposition that we bring to play, it's about energy efficiency. It's about low maintenance costs. It's about environmentally friendly products. And by the way, we also give you a cost competitive solution. So I think we need to shift the needle in terms of what our business fundamentals are towards this. And self-sufficiency for me has to include this larger envelope. Otherwise, we will be doing a huge disservice to ourselves and to the country. Now, in all this change, that we are changing the value proposition of the organization from a cost-based or a price-based organization to something that's a much broader spectrum of value to the customer. We need to, one of the biggest transformation is people, right? Now, if you look at the current context of what happened in the crisis, you know, the whole migrant labor issue really brought to the forefront the way we are handling people. Now, people produce at the last mile of the quality of the product, last mile of the reliability of the product. Now, we cannot be using people as a resource. You know, typically when you look at the accounting of people, it is about, you know, you account people as an expense. But we don't look at people as an asset on the balance sheet. And I think that fundamental shift has to happen in order for us to build that world-class organization that enables us, by the way, to also become self-sufficient as a nation. So this big transformation has to happen within our organization, and this is something that we need to really be focused on. And all this takes time. This is not something in the crisis people come and talk about tomorrow we're going to be self-sufficient, whether it's the crisis, the problems with China. All these transformations take time, and it requires committed, diligent, steadfast, you know, conformance to the path that is required to get us there. Now the whole concept of building world class. I mean, you look at people. Look at why all of us go to work. We all go to work because we want to improve our standard of living. And one aspect of standard of living is what we earn. Now, when we build the competitiveness of our individual organizations on the platform of being low cost, by virtue of the fact that we have low labor costs, we are pretty much shooting ourselves in our own foot. So our model of building competence, our model of building self-sufficiency should be founded on the basis that Indians are expensive and Indians are not cheap. Now, how do you build that competencies across the organization where Indians are expensive and we are still competitive and we are able to provide value proposition, and by virtue of that, be a global player, and by virtue of being a global player, we are also self-sufficient as a nation. Now, the whole concept of self-sufficiency needs to be looked at on a much broader platform than a very narrow platform of saying, how can we protect ourselves? How can we create tariff barriers and create a very protective limit? I don't think that's a sustainable thing. Now, in the transformation of manufacturing specifically, I'm not an expert in the specific tools and technologies that one could deploy. And there are eminent speakers that have been listed in this webinar who will be talking about that. But one central thing that has been making the rounds for the last 5 years, and nothing specific to this crisis, is the whole concept of digitization of the organization. And that seems to be a very popular, favorite kind of a term that is bandied around quite frequently. My only caution there is digitization is a tool. It's not an end by itself. We have to be very careful about what are the challenges or what are the opportunities that we want to leverage in our company in the process of building this value proposition to the customer, And where does digital solutions fit into that? And I think it's very important that we focus on the desired outcomes of our business. A digital solution will enable or make it more effective or make it more efficient. So this whole concept of building a self-sufficient nation or a self-sufficient organization cannot be looked at in a very narrow term. It needs to be looked at in a much broader thing about building world-class organizations, a world-class country that competes on the basis of a broad spectrum of value proposition that we can bring to the customer. And it is not centered around Indians remaining cheap and low cost. And that's not consistent with what we want to build or what we should be building as organization and as a country. So I will stop here. This is basically the thoughts that I wanted to share with you in this webinar. I will rely on your questions to clarify thoughts that I may have or you may have. Thank you very much. Again, I wish you well. I wish you to stay safe. And thank you for inviting me for this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you for that enlightening session, Dr. Jairam. Indeed, now self-sufficiency needs to be considered as an interconnected concept, and we need to be world-class in the products that we create. And we need to look at value proposition beyond price. So before you take off, I have a couple of questions for you. And my first question to you is India ready for self-sufficiency entirely? What would be your recommendations for the industry and the government?
Well, I'm not, I don't have administrative experience or political experience to advise the government. But, you know, when I look at our own experience when we are building a strategy for the company, we can't boil the ocean. There are tons of opportunities for us as a company, but we can't boil the ocean and try to leverage all of the opportunities at the same time. It's about prioritization, and building a strategy is about discriminated investment in resources and a discriminating focus on what you want to do. So even as a country, I think if we want to be self-sufficient in everything that we consume, I think it would be akin to boiling an ocean. As a country, then we need to take a strategy of what we want to focus on and what we want to build. As an organization, it's about self-sufficiency is about, it's possible. We have the talent, we have the capability, but what we really need to do is start with a very, very strong aspiration that we want to get there. The destination has to be a total commitment to that destination.
Okay, and my next question to you is, how do you keep balance between cash conservation and investments in advanced technology in the current situation?
Well, in the current situation, like you said, is current, right?
Yeah.
So you need to navigate this very carefully to ensure that you retain the financial stamina in the company. But the current is not going to be the future. The future is going to be very different. So what you need to do during this time is to ensure that the financial stamina of the company is ensured so that you go into the future very strongly, right? So I don't have a specific answer of how you'll balance the cash between investment and conservation, but that's something that's very contextual to each company. But the end goal should be to preserve the financial stamina for what is to come in the future.
All right. And I have one last question for you. It is, do you think that self-sufficiency is spoken to compete only with China and the imports?
I don't know in what context this was raised, so I can't comment on what was the genesis of this whole principle of self-sufficiency that's doing the popular rounds these days.
Right.
The principle of a nation of our size and with our capability to be able to build a nation that is capable of building products for ourselves and for the world is not something that that is not very far from what we can aspire for. Now, if you look at a country like Japan, when it went through the process of transformation after the Second World War, they had a principle of self-sufficiency. They wanted Japanese companies to make products for the Japanese market, but in the process, they made products for the world, right?
Mm.
That is how they built their competitiveness, and they did it sectorally. They started with something as basic as steel, then they went into consumer electronics, then they went into automotive, they went into shipbuilding. Progressively, they took sectors. The same thing was repeated by the Korean companies after the Korean War in 1950. They did the same thing. They were also the principle was self-sufficiency, but the larger envelope was global competitiveness, to be globally relevant. And they built it sectorally.
Mhm. Okay, and one more question for you. Your thought seems to reflect an ecosystem approach. So what is an ecosystem that we can tap into for this endeavor, or do we need to need a new one?
I think the organization's ecosystem, you can talk about the ecosystem at the economy level, and transferring the blame for all our ills to the government, it just absolves you of your own responsibility, right?
Right.
There are enough opportunities within the organization to build an ecosystem that will energize and provide the right platform for each organization to build its competitiveness.
Okay.
I don't see that as a limitation at all. Sure, the social infrastructure, whether it is logistics or whether it's transportation, whether it is the efficiency of the bureaucracy, all this can make things better. But I think if we don't transform internally within the organization, I don't think changes there are going to make a country better.
Okay. Thank you so much for making time out, Dr. Jairam. It was lovely having you with us.
Thank you.
And we would like to have you sometime soon on our next webinar as well.
Thank you so much.
Your session was really great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, before we move on to the next session, we have a technology video presentation by our by our partner, Altair.
Data drives your business, and every business. Whether you're using it to build your executive strategy or crunching the numbers to mitigate risk and ensure compliance, you need to do more with your data. Our solutions give you better access to more information, access to data that's big and diverse, internal and external, structured and unstructured, static and streaming. This allows you to maximize its value by making it all usable and repeatable. Your analysts and executives need analytics they can trust. And with a secure, unified data marketplace, you can ensure data integrity, data lineage, and better control, so everyone can work together with creativity and confidence. Generate greater insight, accountability, and results for you and your organization.
Okay, so now we have a technology presentation by Mr. Sudhir Padaki. He's the director of data analytics at Altair. I would request Mr. Padaki to please stick to the time slot that has been given and leave 2 to 3 minutes at spare for the Q&A. Over to you, Mr. Padaki.
Thank you, Anvita. I hope you're able to hear me clearly.
Yes, you are audible.
I'll just share my screen and just let me know if you're able to see the slides.
Yes, yes, it's visible.
So thank you for the opportunity and thank you for the introduction. So the next 8, 9 minutes, I will talk a little bit about the value of data in an environment of a smart factory, or what is the value of data in terms of manufacturing, more essentially. It was a great keynote presentation by Mr. Jairam Varadaraj. I think one key point that he made is building or moving away from the labor arbitrage and then moving towards being a technology leader is quite essential in this new normal. And that's pretty much what I wanted to focus on how data can play a role in helping and enabling companies to achieve these goals. Very shortly about Altair, we are an American organization in business for over 35 years. The products that we have are centered around product design, data analytics, and artificial intelligence. There are about 12,000 customers globally in various verticals, be it the heavy industry, automotive, aerospace, or various other industrial segments that we work with. Now, coming back to the topic that we have in hand, what is the next in the new normal? And it very well connects to what was presented in the keynote, that I think there is a need for us to evolve towards innovative products, more connected products. And of course, there is obviously a growing trend, and which will, I think, continue to grow, to remotely monitor everything. That is because of the fact that in the next years to come, at least, human intervention is something we will try to avoid as much as possible. There are stronger digitalization efforts that is going to happen in manufacturing. I think this is happening already. Of course, as pointed out earlier, digitalization sometimes is a very abused word, but I think digitalization without understanding what the ROI of digitalization is going to be extremely key. That to understand the ROI and then take the necessary steps of digitalizing a particular process. Data-driven decisions is going to be more and more intensive as we move forward, I think, in this region. And this is basically nothing new. This data is produced all across the factory. It's just that the insights that are there in this data are typically sometimes ignored. Only a portion of the data is actually used for any decision making, be it beyond finance, be it beyond supply chain, be it beyond manufacturing shop floor itself, to improve the efficiency of how you produce your goods. So what is that you can do when we talk about digitalization? There are various segments one could work in. Usually the first place and more often you can hear that they all start there is to connect all your equipment on the shop floor, for example, and start doing remote monitoring. Now, just monitoring will not really bring anything, but unless you have intelligence coupled to it. So there are all these possibilities of utilizing artificial intelligence, machine learning, to be able to tackle use cases in predictive and prescriptive maintenance, shop floor efficiency improvements, product quality analytics, for example. And to make all this remote and to be able to do this all together remotely, there is a lot of push towards going towards a digital operator, wherein one is trying to integrate all this information using AR, VR technologies, augmented reality, for example, or even in mobility and having the access to this data and analytics all across the organization. Now, how does that look in a smart plant environment? If I take a reasonably automated shop floor environment containing various levels of automation, the first thing you would like to do is to stream data from the sources and to remotely monitor these processes that are happening. Access to this real-time data is already going to give you a fair bit of edge over efficiency and monitoring quality very carefully. Once this data is actually available to you, one would then go and prepare data science models for a particular use case. If one wants to tackle product quality, facing quality issues, one would take this data and start prepping up models which would eventually can be launched in real time, so that you're able to do real-time decision making. Either it could be something related to the maintenance, or it could be a process anomaly that is happening on the shop floor. So these are the three essential layers I would say is extremely necessary to be able to take steps towards creating manufacturing analytics. It's also important to recognize that you need to be able to combine all these data sources, which are typically various silos, and to be able to make any decision with some ROI coming out of it. It's essential to be able to combine multiple sources of data, not just limited again to the manufacturing shop floor, but to be able to connect it to your ERP systems or any other transactional systems that you actually have. Now, a data analytics workflow, when you actually want to launch it, for example, on a manufacturing shop floor, typically consists of these 5 steps. The first and probably the most important one is the value identification, acquisition of data, and then processing this data, because the data itself is not so clean. There's a lot of garbage you might have to clean. And then building a machine learning model, be it for predictive maintenance or for a production process optimization. And then the ability to deploy these models again back to the shop floor. That is where the real value would come out of this. These 5 steps are extremely essential to be able to gain any insights. At the same time, the most important steps, if I have to pick, are the value identification and model deployment. For 2 reasons. If you do not know the use case where you are actually going to implement this and not just acquire data and do some analytics, it's going to be difficult. So you have to really do a value identification study prior to going on this journey. At the same time, the ability to deploy is also very key. There is no point building an extremely complicated machine learning model, and if you're not able to deploy it on the field, on the shop floor, or on the asset, the purpose is basically lost. The rest of the stuffs are, there's tons of software available, tons of methodologies available to be able to do that. So my center of gravity would be right in between, in this case, between model deployment and value identification. And the use cases typically one would start attempting is towards asset monitoring and maintenance, production process optimization, and warranty and quality. These are the 3 use cases one would start attempting to be able to tackle this, anything in respect to manufacturing or operations. And basically asset monitoring, doing it remotely, is going to change quite a lot in the future, wherein you interactively work with the environment in your shop floor, look at the efficiencies which are on the shop floor, and also not only that, but also understand what are the maintenance actions that I need to take, and what are the possibilities of, what are the procedures to maintain a particular piece of equipment, and to interactively work with this equipment and not to, again, create multiple data silos. And at the same time, the possibilities of remotely understanding what the health of these machines are there any anomalies that have come up in the last minutes? Is there anything that is going to happen in the next few minutes? And also simulating various scenarios, like what if I change the sensor temperature? Is it going to increase my chances of failure or not? As you can see on the screen, the chance of failure just went down. So these type of analysis and integration with these type of, I would say, remote interactive environments is going to be extremely essential in the new normal. At the same time, asset monitoring, building applications to be able to not just look equipment as a physical equipment, but to look it as a digital twin of your equipment, and to understand, slice and dice the data that is coming out of it. For example, here we are monitoring vibration data that is coming out of rotating equipment. In this case, it was a CNC machine, and just looking at the process parameters and understanding what is actually happening. Are there any abnormalities in this machine? That is something that is quite important to have a single platform wherein you are able to do all this remotely also. This new normal has also created many possibilities to use technology. One of the things that is going to happen in the future is also, especially on the shop floor, to understand what social distancing violations are happening on the shop floor. So the technologies like image and object recognition and segmentation help you to also understand if there are violations that are happening on the shop floor, which would lead to any issues in terms of human contact, for example. As you can see on the video, we are tracking basically the movement of people here, but this could be from a camera feed of a shop floor, where you can understand if there are social distancing violations happening, and these violations can then be recorded, and then corrective action can be recommended out to the employees on the shop floor. So I wanted to give a very quick glimpse of all these pieces of technology and the possibilities that data and analytics can offer. I'll be happy to take any questions one has. Amita?
Yeah. Uh, I'm so sorry for the delay. Thank you for that informative session, Mr. Padaki. And like you mentioned, understanding the ROI and then taking steps towards digitalization is really important. Before you go, I have one question for you. Like the softwares which you showed. So the skilling and the training, can you explain that process to us, please? Like how would the employees now on the shop floor would require the skilling and development for the software?
Yeah, so typically one would embark on a digitalization journey, and the first thing one would do is end up recruiting a lot of data scientists. I think that's where we go wrong, I think, especially on the manufacturing shop floor. One really needs to look at use cases first from the domain perspective and understand what sort of analytics you want to build, and accordingly getting the necessary skill. And I would rather go with training a shop floor member with analytics skills rather than taking an analytics guy and training for them on the domain. The second method is extremely complicated.
Okay. Okay. And one more question for you. In a data ocean, how is the data integrity monitored and filtered before a data analytics is applied on it?
Yeah, so there's various tools available, including the tools that we actually promote that help you understand, first of all, integrate the data that is coming from all these data sources and create this what we call as the single view of data, wherein you are creating logically a relationship between all these data sources and then doing exploratory data analysis on that, which will give you the idea of what is all about.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for making time out, Mr. Padaki. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we'll move on, and I would like to welcome our guest speaker, Mr. Gautam Sivabalan, the Senior Director of Manufacturing and Process Consulting Practice at Frost & Sullivan. I would request Mr. Sivabalan to please adhere to the time slot and leave 2 to 3 minutes at spare for the Q&A. Over to you, Mr. Sivabalan.
Thank you, Anvita. Heard you loud and clear. I'll try and make sure that we stick to the frame for sure.
Thank you.
Make sure we get this wrapped up in time. I'd like to just share my screen. Got a brief presentation to just show my thoughts around. Is this visible now?
Yes, Mr. Balan, it is visible.
Yeah, awesome. So, a good afternoon to everybody, and it's a pleasure being here. Thank you, Anvita, and your team for inviting me to share my thoughts. When you asked about what are the thoughts that we've got on the manufacturing now, next and beyond, before we actually got around to making this presentation, a whole bunch of thoughts ran around in my head. I'm not sure as to where we start, where do you, there are so many dimensions to manufacturing. I always firmly believe, I'm from manufacturing myself, I'm from the shop floor, so I firmly believe that manufacturing is somewhat underrated. And it's great to see so many thinkers and the kind of technology improvements that we're talking about right now, all of them coming back and focusing on manufacturing. And I think this is going to be extremely essential for us to bounce back and look at the future. When we're talking about now, next and beyond, one of the things I thought I'd like to bring into view, which I'm pretty sure most of the people on the call already know, but just to add a perspective saying that why are we talking about all of this today is because of the disruption that COVID-19 has caused. And we had a lot of pundits, both in Frost & Sullivan, we looked at the IMF, we looked at the Worldometer and the various predictions. To cut a long story short, and all the analysis put together talked about only 3 core aspects that kind of impact the overall global GDP growth. And if you look at a quarter-to-quarter prediction, they're talking about what is the depth of disruption. That is, how bad are we going to be hit? And the second perspective is in terms of the length of disruption, saying that how long are we going to be in that disruption? And the third is in the shape of recovery, whether you've got a sharp curve, you've got a U-shaped curve. And these 3 aspects are very vital for industries and economies to plan in terms of where their strategies have to be. And it is very important that industries also keep track of each of these predictions in terms of where they are and if the recovery phase is going to be faster, because this has a direct linkage to the kind of demand and supply equation that we're going to be talking about today. If you look at a bunch of industries that have had a net positive impact, starting from the healthcare, the chemicals, the packaged food, the metals and food industries, all the way down through to mobility, aerospace, and tourism, which have been the most badly hit, I would say, with a net negative impact because of the COVID situation. And this drastic change in the demand and supply across this industry sector is something that we are witnessing for the first time in such a deep, I would say, impact. Have you been able to handle surprises? If you look at both the positively impacted industries, we still not, a lot of these industries are still struggling to react to sudden surge in demand. They're not able to supply to the market needs, obvious shortages of the workforce, not being able to ramp up suppliers, ensuring that the work environment is safe, whether we need to adopt new technologies. So a lot of companies have jumped on the bandwagon and saying, yeah, you know what, I think we need to implement a lot of new technologies. And if you look at the other side of the spectrum for the negatively impacted industries, they're not able to figure out how do we handle loss of demand, serious cash flow related issues, losing skill to various other places, ability not to be able to retain existing customers, resource related constraints, and deep thinking in terms of whether we need to invest in essential technology. These are all some of those things that have cropped up in the minds of both the positively impacted industries as well as the negatively impacted industries. We should always look at when we, what we believe when you're talking about planning for the future, we have a lot of past that we can actually learn from. And if you look at the last 20 years, we have actually seen a few downturns in the economy as well. None obviously as sharp or as impactful as the COVID, which you see on the right-hand side of your screen. But there have been lessons that have come to us, or I would say the economic crises that we have gone through in the last 20 years. And we try to look back and say, what are the things that should have learned because of these economic crises in the past, and how do we shape ourselves to make sure that we handle the present one in a more effective manner. I would like to break it into 3 different eras when you talk about the entire manufacturing and supply chain. The initial era was the Ford era, where the entire world was built on the philosophy that having a well-stocked supply chain is essential to success, being able to meet customer delivery requirements, ensuring that we are able to capture the market, and that was the key philosophy. Toyota invented the lean era, where inventories were deemed as waste, and getting the suppliers closer to you, treating them as partners, and going towards a single source was the norm. And obviously that was something that worked well for Toyota and has been a postulate for success since. Subsequent to that, there has been a slight modification of that, and they said, we are getting into the agile supply chains, where we're talking about a high degree of flexibility. We're talking about mass customization. And each of these eras were probably a breakthrough in terms of being able to meet customer expectations, and also to make sure that the companies that adopted it were quite competitive in the market. But this brings us to an important aspect that we believe is also core to the supply chain, which I think is something that was missed so far: resilience. So what do we mean by this? What I believe is that one of the things that the present disruption due to COVID has exposed some of the failure modes in our value chain. And a lot of sourcing and supply strategies have been exposed. And I think we should look at this more of an opportunity for us to relook at and look at how do we fix these gaps. Clearly the tier 1 and tier 2 supplier base has been exposed because structurally they are very weak. We're talking about risk assessment and mitigation, something that is spoken about almost in all boardrooms, something that's spoken about in all strategy meetings, but how much of it actually has got deep roots is something that got exposed now. And if you look at the strategy for sourcing, predominantly has been driven by cost competitiveness. So we've basically compromised on lean or agility at the cost of being sustainable or resilience. And I think that is one of the wake-up calls that I think that COVID has brought to us. And Mr. Sudhi said earlier, and Dr. Jairam also mentioned, technology or the adoption of technology to enable rapid improvement is something that is very low presently in the country. When I'm talking about technology, it can be anything related to improvement at the shop floor, where you're talking about productivity, quality, delivery, and other operational matrices. Or if you talk about, rapid training, scaling up, de-skilling, where you're talking about the AR, VR that is coming into play, and at an enterprise level, where we're talking about end-to-end visibility of the entire supply chain, talking about from the customer side all the way through till the constraints at the tier 1 or the tier 2 supplier, so that most of the decision that we're talking about, whether it is strategic or whether it is tactical or even operational, is based on meaningful data and information. So that brings us to a very simple question, and a debatable question for sure, is whether technology is the silver bullet that is going to be a panacea to all the issues that are presently plaguing the manufacturing right now. There are various sections of it when you talk about the MES and the ERP part of it, where you talk, then the other side is in terms of the digital workplace, where we're talking about everything coming into data analytics, the IoT, the industrial Internet of Things, and the smart factory, which is something that's doing the rounds a lot. RPA, which is predominantly right now adopted by a lot of service sector companies, and the manufacturing is taking these up. But I think what would be important for us to take cognizance of is where these technologies are going to help in the future. What I believe is there are three key elements that I think have changed. One is there will be a faster move from physical brick and mortar to virtual environments. A lot of businesses right now, some of the companies that I'm working with are already talking about how do they make their presence virtual a lot more impactful, and a complete strategy teams are being set up to make sure they leverage a virtual environment as such. There is also a strong belief that the companies will move from a centralized to a more decentralized mode of operations, which means to say connected organizations, connected factories, and the use of technology is going to be more and more a need. And the paradigm shift, I think Dr. Jairam also mentioned, saying that we are talking about the entire focus is to ensure that we invest in technology towards an end value proposition, and this technology, and we have to move beyond cost optimization to being resilient, to being innovative, to being able to handle variations either in demand or in terms of customer expectations faster as such. And if you look at the simple things is to make sure that each individual industry specific equations have to be built, automation, ensuring that the right and affordable technology is embraced, and the fundamentals still needs to be focused on, and ensure that strategic results are at the core of any investment or any decisions on technology that is to be made. And what we have done at Frost is we've actually spent quite a bunch of time and effort engaging with some of the key CEOs of large corporations, and talk to them about what are their top of the mind issues. What you see are the 9 bulleted points on your left are typically what are there in their minds. The liquidity issues, ensuring that productivity and employee morale are maintained. Obviously, growth and diminished sales pipelines is something that's giving them sleepless nights. Ensuring that maturity in the digital way of working, and probably the need to relook at their existing business model is something that many people believe is the right time right now to dig and see if there is a different way of engaging with clients. And then what is it that we need to look at to either adopt different customer engagement models and to prepare for the rebound. So we broke this into 3 phases, where we called it as the respond phase, the reset phase, and the rebound phase. And most companies that are presently embarking on trying to make sure that they are well equipped to hit the ground running when the market and the demand opens up, is they've split their focus into three core areas. One is the crisis management team, which was something that wasn't existing. Typically, most companies always spoke about growth. Most companies always spoke about the financials. But now, forward-thinking companies are talking about three core aspects. One is the crisis management team. The second is the growth team. And the third is the digital transformation team. And these three teams working in coherence to each other have been extremely important in defining their strategies and way forward. So in the response phase, we talk about how do they build a centralized task force managed by the crisis management team, and the growth team is looking at identifying different avenues to look for eventual growth when the demand starts opening up. And the digital transformation team looks at trying to see how do you activate key IT resources and how do you plan for remote working. There are a lot of examples that we've seen, that we can talk about that's already making the news of how people, how organizations are coming to norms, are coming to grips saying that the new norm of working away from the office is going to be something that is no longer in the future, but something that is going to continue right after the COVID as well. In the reset phase, typically you relook at how the new policies get built to strengthen each and every part of the organizations by the crisis management team. And then the growth team will start relooking at existing business models, look at a completely different go-to-market plan, and so on. So essentially, I would like to just conclude by saying that while there is no single formula for that you could say is applicable to all the kind of companies, but on a core principle, as long as these three core elements of being able to manage the crisis right now. So your crisis management team will be the most impactful in the response phase. Your growth team and the digital transformation team will use the present response phase and the time right now to build, prioritize, and develop the plans for us to implement during the reset and the rebound phase, where we actually harness the potential demand that I think eventually it is going to go up. One of the good things about any such recession is, I think the only way forward is going up, and companies that adopt a very seamless and a coherent management of all these three core areas will be the ones coming out shining. And with that, I'd like to conclude my presentation, and hopefully I've stuck to my timeline. Yeah. Thank you, Anvita.
Yes, Mr. Sivabalan, you have stuck to your time. Thank you so much. And before you go, I have a couple of questions for you. My first question for you is, like, for the last 3 months now, there has been stagnated operations, and there has been, the demand has been less, while the cost, there has been an increase in cost pressure, right? So what will be corporates? What do you think would be corporate stand on investing in new technologies in this coming time?
It's a good question. It's something that we've been working with a couple of clients who are right now on the verge of trying to take a decision on this. It is like a double-edged sword. Right now, we are talking about reserving cash flow, making sure that we don't get into investments. Whereas when we talk about new technologies, it also means that when you're taking on investment into new technology, is this the right time? So there's a lot of talk that is going on in the corporate circles. But my perspective would be that right now would be a great time to actually plan and keep everything ready to deploy. Evaluate whatever options are there, build the use cases, run it through, get simulations done, run through a bunch of pilots, because you have the time right now experiment and not cause a big dent right now. And once the demand starts picking up, the companies would still have to be prudent in making sure that the right investments are being made. So a couple of the companies that we are working with, we've typically adopted the same approach, where we're looking at how each of these companies are taking a very slow but a very detailed approach to picking up what is the right kind of adoption of digital transformation now.
Right. And another question to you is, what about collaboration and acquisition activities post the COVID pandemic? How will they get impacted?
I didn't hear you. You said collaboration and acquisition?
Collaboration and acquisitions.
Yeah, I think I would like to treat them both slightly differently, because when you say collaboration, it's basically working together. Acquisition, I think now is the prime time if you're one of those guys who want to invest in companies, looking at the right kind of acquisition of organizations. If that's what you're talking about, I think now is the right time
Right.
to to put your money where you think the growth is going to happen. Collaboration is something that we see a lot of industries co-collaborating, like, between the service and the manufacturing sectors as well. So I think that is going to be the way new norm. We've even seen in a couple of FMCG, unfortunately, because of confidentiality, I can't name the companies, but a couple of companies in the FMCG sector are actually working together to be able to, harness the new norms and work together. So we see a lot more of this happening.
Okay, and so we have one more question for you. It's difficult to give a dedicated team this task for this task to merge into a situation, right? So how do you advise to interlink all the teams to face this efficiently?
If you're talking about handling the pandemic and making sure that they are ready for the next wave of growth, while I don't think that you can have one team that can do all of it. Or position is you have one typically the traditional approach of one cross-functional team trying to sit together generally creates more chaos. So my recommendation is have separate sets of experts working on 3 or 4 different aspects, very critical and relevant to the organization, but have a very robust governance structure where they talk together and come together in a coherent manner. Because at the end of the day, everybody is obviously looking at growth, looking at ensuring that they get through this situation and come out better prepared for the opportunities that are going to be available. So rather than putting all of them into one and having a mix of opinions, have experts come with their own approach and then see how do all of these merge together into what would be best for the organization. Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Silvalan, for making time out. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you for taking me.
Yeah. And now, before we move, before we move on, I have a request to our speakers to please keep their microphones close to their mouth while speaking so that there is enough audio clarity. And moving on to the next session, now we have a technology presentation by Mr. Nitin Malwadkar, Country Technical Manager, Mainstream Engineering, Siemens PLM Software. I would request Mr. Nitin to please stick to the time slot and leave 2 to 3 minutes at spare for the Q&A. Over to you, Mr. Nitin.
Yeah, thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. Yes, you're audible.
Okay, perfect. So thank you, Anvita. Good afternoon, all. My name is Nitin Malwadkar, and I'm currently working with Siemens as a country technical manager for Mainstream Engineering. And for today's session, I'm going to briefly show you how Solid Edge can help you increase your product design efficiency. So for most of you, the first thing that probably comes to your mind when you think about Solid Edge might be, 3D CAD or mechanical CAD software. Of course, mechanical CAD is the main feature of Solid Edge, but over the last couple of years, we have made significant enhancements and added multiple new solutions to help you as a customer with each and every aspect of your product design. We have introduced multiple new solutions, like, for example, electrical design, which can help your electrical designers to create their electrical designs completely from scratch. Moving back to your mechanical design, let's say once your mechanical design is complete, now you want to validate whether your designs that you have designed are actually how they're going to perform in real life. So for that, instead of going for physical testing, we provide you the option of doing a virtual simulation with the use of our analysis tools, which we call it as Solid Edge simulation. Once your product is done, once your product is tested, and you're sure that you can go for manufacturing, then we have multiple tools inside Solid Edge which can help you generate the required tool parts for your process. For your discrete manufacturing. So in case some of you might be working on or using 3-axis machines or 5-axis machines, or even total machining, we have you completely covered. Now, from a customer's point of view, let's say when your product is done, you normally don't give your product just like that, right? You give some documentation along with it. So we call it as technical documentations. Now, technical documentations might be in various forms. It might be in terms of user manuals or installation guides, or even something which is required on the shop floor. It might be your, your assembly instructions as well. So all these different types of technical documentations can be created with the use of Solid Edge technical publications. Now, when you have so many different products, and of course, as a company, you're not going to be working on one single product. You'll be having multiple different products that you design, right? So when you're talking about multiple designs, multiple products, of course, you're going to generate a lot of data. This data might be in the form of your parts, your assemblies, your drawings, your PDFs, your Excels, and whatnot. So from a company's perspective, how do you manage that data? And how do you manage that data? How do you manage that data securely? Well, we have a fantastic integration with probably the world's best PLM software, Teamcenter. Recently, we have also introduced something new, which is a tool for collaborating your ideas across your different teams in the company, or even sometimes you might want to get some validation from your vendor or your customer. So we have a free tool which is available, which you call it as Solid Edge Portal, by which you can easily send out your files, your part files, your assembly files, and the other person doesn't need to have any software installed in order to view them. So like I mentioned, when I talk about mechanical design, yeah, mechanical design is the main feature of Solid Edge. But what makes us so unique as compared to our competitors? Now, as most of you are aware, there are two types of approaches when it comes to product design. The first one is a history-based modeling, which is probably the traditional way of 3D modeling. Now, history-based modeling comes along with their own advantages. For example, it's highly automated and it's completely feature-based. So in case you want to make some changes, you just need to go and select a feature and make the required changes. But then they have their own disadvantages as well. And the most significant disadvantage is that it requires a lot of pre-planning from a designer's perspective while creating or designing a particular part. Now, there are a lot of softwares which are well-known softwares which are using this particular approach when it comes to designing. So you talk about SolidWorks, you talk about Inventor, they're using this history-based modeling for designing of their products. Another approach for designing is what we call it as direct modeling. Again, direct modeling comes along with its own advantages as well. For example, it is extremely flexible when it comes to editing a particular part or a face or a feature. But then it has its own set of disadvantages, as in there is very little design automation that you can do with direct modeling. Again, we have quite a few softwares who are using direct modeling as well. For example, and one of the most significant ones is Creo Direct. So what Siemens has done is we have taken both the advantages of this history-based modeling and a direct modeling to come up with a new kind of a technology, which we call as a synchronous technology. So how does this new technology benefit us in efficient product design? Simple. Because of synchronous technology, designers now have the ability to design faster. Not only that, but they can edit and implement changes rapidly, thereby reducing design time and eliminate the costly design errors before manufacturing itself. Now, this in turn will help your companies reduce your time to market and also increase your productivity as well. So another solution that we are genuinely excited about is electrical design. Now, we have recently introduced a new solution called wiring design, in which your electrical designers can create their electrical designs from scratch. It doesn't make a difference whether you're working on a single phase circuit or a three-phase circuit. The same solution can be used for creating all the circuits as well. Now, the beauty about this particular solution is that electrical designers can actually validate their electrical circuits for any shortcomings, or it might be they want to check the circuit for the logic, or they might want to check the circuit for any short circuits or even any open circuits. They can do this validation within the software itself rather than waiting for creating a physical prototype and then testing it, which is a very costly affair. Now, to complement our wiring design, we have come up with another solution, which we call it as a harness design. Harness design, again, is a new solution in which your electrical designers or your mechanical designers will be able to help. I mean, this helps in creating the 1:1 scale form board diagrams, which are required for manufacturing. These come along with their own intelligent components as well, which help in producing automatic bill of materials, as well as the cutting list which is required for the purchase teams. Now, what is so unique about Solid Edge is we have something which is available only with Solid Edge, which we call it as a connected mode. Now, the advantage of Solid Edge electrical design is that we can seamlessly import the electrical data into the mechanical data and create the required 3D wires and cables. Also, the Solid Edge electrical helps address the age-old issue of poor communication between the electrical department and the mechanical department of any changes. Now, this is where the connected mode comes into picture, which is available only with Solid Edge. This connected mode helps to sync both the electrical department and the mechanical department of any changes, thereby reducing the time-consuming errors as well as the cost which are associated with these errors on the production line. Now, like I mentioned, when you're working on your mechanical design, once your mechanical design is done, then maybe you would like to validate your designs, right? Again, that's what we call this as a validation tool as against an analysis tool. Why? Because this tool is basically meant for designers who have already designed the parts. That designers know where the fixtures are going to be mounted. They know where the forces are going to be acting on. So that's why we have come up with a Solid Edge simulation portfolio, which is very easy for even designers to start work on. So in case you're looking for a FE analysis, we have it completely covered with the range of analysis that your designers will be able to perform in Solid Edge. Now, be it a linear static analysis or thermal analysis, or even finding effects of vibration on your products. And the best part about these this solution is that all these solutions are powered by NX Nastran, which is a universally renowned and a proven solver. Now, we also provide you with the necessary tools to reduce the material required for manufacturing your products with the help of topology and design optimization. Now, so for customers who are interested in CFD analysis, we have a fantastic tool, again, which is integrated with Solid Edge, which we call it as Solid Edge Flow EFD. Now, as you can see, there are multiple capabilities of this particular single tool. So in case some of you might be working on electronics cooling, some of you might be interested in PCB modeling, or some of you might even be working on rotating equipments like compressors, and they want to find out where the vortices are. This single tool can help you achieve the same. Again, this tool is a beautiful tool which can be used for your complete CFD analysis. Now, as Solid Edge is renowned for its sheet metal design capabilities, it only made sense for us to help our customers in efficiently manufacturing them. So Solid Edge nesting is one such solution which helps you achieve the same. Now, the beauty of Solid Edge nesting is that not only can we import the Solid Edge files directly, but some of you might be working on your DXF and DWG files, which have already been created. We can still import these DXF and DWG files as well. Solid Edge nesting uses an extremely efficient algorithm, which not only can nest multiple sheets of same and different sizes, but can also nest inside the openings as well. Thereby, it reduces the sheet usage. The results can be exported again as a DWG or a DXF for most of the laser cut or the water cut machines, or can be exported to a CAM solution, which can help in generating the required tool paths. Now, let's have a look at some of the customers who have already implemented Solid Edge successfully across India. Now you can see Solid Edge is used across multiple industry verticals, which range from automotive and transportation, automation systems, consumer products, your construction machinery, power, process industry, and last but not the least, your packaging industry as well. One such customer who has successfully implemented Solid Edge is Uflex. Now, as you can see, by implementing Solid Edge, the customer was able to reduce the new product development time by up to 70%, which is a significant reduction. Another global customer is Industrial Control Association based out of USA. What they're saying is, with the use of Solid Edge, not only did they reduce the time to market by 33%, But more importantly, they reduced the rework rate from 20% to just 2%, which resulted in increased profitability. So just to summarize, SolidEdge is no longer just a mechanical 3D CAD solution anymore. With the expansive portfolio solutions, we can help address every need of a company, from capturing your conceptual ideas to making these concepts come to reality. And with that, I would like to end my presentation. So in case you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to address them now.
Thank you, Mr. Nitin, for that presentation. And it was really insightful. Like that, I'm sure our audience would be it would really help our audience eventually. So I have a couple of questions for you before you go.
Sure.
So my first question to you is, how significant is SolidEdge in the current situation with new normal, lesser manpower, the social distancing norms, and everything, and the volatile markets, of course. So how significant role does SolidEdge play?
Well, SolidEdge, the advantages of SolidEdge is like we have multiple types of licenses, so that it's not necessary for a customer to visit an office and then have to design whatever products that they're working on. We provide you multiple licensing ways by which they can even start working from their own homes as well without any productivity issues.
Right. Okay. And my second question is, what about training and skill upgradation, and of course compatibility that is required?
I'm sorry, come back on.
What about the training, skill upgradation, and the compatibility that is required for SolidEdge?
Well, the best part about SolidEdge is it's completely based on the Windows platform. So anybody who's working on Windows, right, which is most of us, right? So they will find SolidEdge very easy to work on. In fact, we say that to learn SolidEdge, it has a very small learning curve. Within 5 days, you will be up and about running, working on your parts and your assemblies which are required for product design.
Okay. And what kind of internet bandwidth or similar infrastructure is required in organizations trying to implement such solutions, especially for cloud-based systems?
Well, to be honest, we don't really require any bandwidth, because what we are doing is client-based machines, client-based solutions. Mm-hmm. So whatever solutions that we are offering are actually meant to be installed on your systems.
All right. And another question is, does this come inbuilt with the CNC if ordered? And how do you communicate with SolidEdge design into CNC?
Yes. So we have a module called SolidEdge CAM Pro, which comes integrated with the CAM module. Mm-hmm. Again, the beauty about this particular module is that your CAM module is very tightly integrated with your CAD module. So in case when you're doing your generating your toolpaths, you find there are some issues which you foresee, and you need to make some changes to your design. Right. No issues. You can directly come back to your CAD, make the required changes, and all these changes will be implemented directly inside your CAM. You don't need to set up anything again.
Okay, and is FEAs with this SolidEdge?
Yeah, FEA is a part of SolidEdge. Like I mentioned, if you're working on different type of analysis, if you're interested in doing linear static or buckling or any type of FEA analysis, we do have it completely covered inside SolidEdge. Okay,
and one more question. Digitalization is a cost right now. So how to calculate ROI? How do you think we can calculate ROI right now? And what requirement to preserve cash?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Can you please repeat that again?
So digitalization, especially because right now the markets are low and everything is an added cost for any company, right? Mm-hmm. So how can companies calculate the ROI before investing into technologies? What are the requirements? What are the basic things that they need to keep in mind while investing into a digital technology like your SolidEdge?
Well, the advantage of SolidEdge is not only are we available as a perpetual license, but we do give an option of going for subscription license as well. So that itself is one way of helping in current situations. Okay.
All right. Perfect. Thank you so much, Mr. Nitin, for making time out and being present here. It was indeed a great presentation.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And before we move on to our next panel discussion, we have our partner video streaming by Siemens and Altair. Can we have the video, please?
Data drives your business, and every business. Whether you're using it to build your executive strategy or crunching the numbers to mitigate risk and ensure compliance, you need to do more with your data. Our solutions give you better access to more information, access to data that's big and diverse, internal and external, structured and unstructured, static and streaming. This allows you to maximize its value by making it all usable and repeatable. Your analysts and executives need analytics they can trust. And with a secure, unified data marketplace, you can ensure data integrity, data lineage, and better control, so everyone can work together with creativity and confidence. Generate greater insight, accountability, and results for you and your organization.
Okay, before we move on, I have a request for our audience to please type out the question in the Q&A box and not in the chat section so that we don't miss out on any questions. And during the panel discussion, if you have any questions for our speakers, please make sure you mention their names next to it if it is redirected to any specific speaker. Now, moving on to the final panel discussion for today, that is on manufacturing now, next, and beyond. I would like to invite our moderator of the session, Mr. Shekhar Jutkar, the Chief Editor of Publish Industry India, and our panelists, Ms. Arundhati Thomas, the Managing Director at Plasma Technologies, Mr. Hitendra N. Mishra, the Senior Vice President and Head, EC, Ishwar Engineering Components, V Commercial Vehicles, Mr. Ashutosh Athale, Senior Vice President, Technology and Business Development, Sigma Electric Manufacturing, Manufacturing Corporations, and Mr. Chandrasekhar Bharti, Managing Director, ACE Micromatic, MIT, and member of National Manufacturing Council. Welcome all.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Hi. Good afternoon. Hope I am
Very good
audible.
afternoon.
So hope you all are doing well and taking good care of yourself. It's my pleasure to moderate today's panel discussion, and I would like to personally thank each of the panel speakers for their participation in the discussion today. So there has been a lot of webinars and virtual discussions happening today on the topic of restarting manufacturing operations, then standard operating procedures during COVID-19 pandemic, and then post-lockdown measures, etc. So we also did a few webinars on this topic. So now it's time to think a little beyond that. So even before the COVID-19 pandemic crisis, manufacturing has been entering a dynamic phase with a profound transformation that is offering substantial opportunities for the global manufacturing world. Technologies will dominate the future of manufacturing, that everybody knows about that. So we will experience a paradigm shift from factory-bound to interconnected device. I think there is a problem with my video. Just a sec.
Yeah, now we can see you also.
Yeah. Sorry for the interruption. So we will experience this paradigm shift from this factory-bound to interconnected devices, and then hypothesis-driven to data-driven, less waste to no waste manufacturing. So overall, manufacturing in the future will look quite different from what it is today. That everybody knows that. So the new era will be marked by the extremely agile organizations that will leverage advanced technologies, for example, digitalization, as they will connect human skills and machinery to deliver extremely customized products to the market. So it becomes very important to understand and analyze how the manufacturing operations would be now, next, and beyond, in terms of the challenges anticipated, in terms of the resource availability, the operations flexibility, workforce management, and that at the same time ensuring the productivity and safety. So, and also the importance of advanced technology as digitalization, then collaborative robots, and additive manufacturing on manufacturing operations. And also we need to understand the role of manufacturing leaders in today's challenging times. So considering this, we have today's panel discussion where we will deliberate on these topics. I will come to the first question to Mr. Mishra. So can you highlight the major changes and the transformations manufacturing operations were going through before COVID-19 pandemic? And do you think those changes got impacted due to this crisis?
Right. Good afternoon, and thank you, Shekhar, for this question. Well, I would say that in India, there has been quite a bit of transformation happening, or across the globe for that way, quite a bit of transformation happening in the manufacturing space. Manufacturing has, over a period of time, has become strong technology driven. No longer we are, at the back end of the technology, we are at the highest end of the technology, where technology across the globe is at the same level, right? As far as manufacturing technology is concerned. So before COVID, I would say before COVID, a lot of things which were ongoing, like Industry 4.0 was the order of the day. That was the organizations were transforming or transitioning into a Industry 4.0 scenario with connected machines. Then there is a great movement and progress which was happening on lean manufacturing. waste elimination or waste elimination, then a visual factory as a setup was definitely a very strong direction in which the visual factory as a setup was moving. And then cellular manufacturing, etc. All these things were order of the day. And if this COVID would not have come, probably this would have moved at a similar or at a high pace setup, because we had to match everybody else in the world. Because now any global business, the challenge is that you have to be at par or better than anyone across the globe in the industry.
Okay.
Transitions which either at a very advanced stage or progressing well. Now, suddenly this COVID has come. Now with COVID, what I would say and what I tell to people is that everybody's knowledge has got reset to zero mode. Nobody across the industry with whatever years of experience has handled a COVID scenario. Now it has all reset to a zero mode. Now, first and foremost, what becomes important is everybody who comes, like you said, that what are the important aspects of a manufacturing person. So one important aspect is everybody who comes to your premise has to feel safest. He should feel, or he or she should feel, that he is entering to a safe zone which is safer than his home or her home. That is the skill which we have, that is the eyes, that is the thought process, and that is the infrastructure we have to create post-COVID. Then the question in terms of how things are impacted. Well, now we have seen a blockage of a working capital cycle because of this lockdown. Cash is not there. People are running loans. People don't have cash to spend. Now, these interventions where the investment is there will be a slow progress. So things will be vital, essential, and desirable. Vital will be the key items which will go forward. But as soon as there is a ease in terms of situation, as soon as the demand goes back, we would see an upsurge in the progress towards this initiative of technology-based manufacturing. This is largely what I had to say.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Athale, you have seen the manufacturing very closely since last few years. So what do you think, how this pandemic has really affected the changes which were happening in the manufacturing sector before this crisis?
Yeah, as just right now got pointed out, a lot of thrust was there in good companies on lean manufacturing, and then on Six Sigma techniques as well, especially for improving quality. Okay, correct. And the digitization techniques came into picture for last 3-4 years, especially. The integration of all these things has never happened in last few years, but at the same time, I don't think anything has changed as on today, because it's a matter of time. Today there is a cash crunch, but there is no option other than going for digitization options based on whatever changes what we are seeing. So for whatever X reason something has not happened, that is going to happen right now. When lean manufacturing, all the benefits what we got, the whole thrust was becoming cost competitive in all the sections, all the sectors. Correct. And especially on the supply chain side, the whole focus was reducing inventory, reducing cost, removing all the buffers. So it worked out well when everything was stable. But at the same time, after pandemic, it has shown its limitations as well, because all the buffers in the supply chain were removed and the things got exposed. So that was the second thing. Then a lot of focus, again, when you talk about risk mitigation, a lot of focus was there on the top tier suppliers. But in that whole process, the lower level suppliers got missed out. And then we ended up paying big price after COVID-19. And even though digitization techniques came in picture, maybe for last 3-4 years especially, still as in the manufacturing industry, a lot of focus was there on analog techniques for analyzing and observing manufacturing operations. So that has not gone away. And especially with COVID-19 and whatever flaws got surfaced out, as against focusing only on cost competitiveness is given if we have to survive and if we have to compete in the global market. But that's not the only thing. Basically, surveillance, sustenance, and resilience of the whole supply chain is coming out as key factors post-pandemic right now.
Right. Yeah, Ms. Arundhati, I would like to ask this second question. So, how is the outlook for the manufacturing operations today in terms of this operation flexibility and optimization? And there are a lot of other factors like resource availability and workforce management, skill upgradation, the approach towards the use of advanced technologies.
Thanks, Shekhar, for organizing this beautiful thing. It's really necessary. All of us need to talk to each other and contribute and figure out new ways of doing it, because this new normal is here to stay. And for all I know, we could have a lockdown tomorrow. So looking at all of this, so looking at all of this, we have to work. Now, I'm going to talk about the fabrication industry or the auto industry or infrastructure industry. Luckily for us, because we are into robotics, we already had a scenario where everything was remotely managed, people could run it. So literally within less than a month of the lockdown kind of eased out, most of our large customers got back into action. We didn't have to move anybody out. We could give them service. We could give them support of all kind. Now, what does that tell us now is that digital transformation is something that the fabrication or the infrastructure industry has been very, very slow at adopting. It only stays at development or a design level. It doesn't come into the production level. Even if you look at the presentations we got earlier, if you see the percent point wise, manufacturing had the lowest percentage, because we really, really haven't looked at how do we digitize ourselves. Today, that is changing. People are realizing that labor force may not be there, may be there. We need to create work from home. We have to manage our system remotely. We have to see that people have given work and they give us value back from work. The steps that are now, I see that people are coming to me with is they want interconnectivity. They want resource redeployment. They want skilling done of the people. Like, if you had a lot of people, now you're probably 1/4 or 1/3 the people with you. So how do you multitask these people smartly? So they're coming back asking for it. They want very collaborative working. That means today I have a lot of manufacturers coming back to me and saying that, okay, will you help me? You build robotics, you build software. Can you help us building our work cells? Can you, so it's become much more collaborative. Yes, at one end, people want to conserve cash, but this backward integration where global is now becoming local is now somewhere gaining momentum. And for somebody like me who's been always talking about Make in India, because we've been building the robotics, the arms, the software, the entire structure at our end, that is now gaining the required recognition. Because we need to re-strategize, re-approach to something that's easily available for us. People are looking at churning inside out, how they need to look at it. Industry 4.0 and all these are words kind of, they came in sooner. But for our robotics and our software, this always existed, which people literally didn't use. They never used none of these modules that were provided built in with our software. Today, they are gaining momentum.
It was just on paper.
Yes. Today, they're coming back and they're saying, okay, we want online training. Can you train our workforce to do that? And we are able to do that. So I think today, as fast as all the manufacturing companies are coming closer with the customer by going beyond a product into service model, I think that's the win-win that will get us going to the next level and, thriving. And then it doesn't matter you're sitting in India or wherever, because you're digitized.
Correct. Yeah, Mr. Chandrasekhar, you were working with digitalization, mainly the Industry 4.0 and all those advanced technologies so far. So how do you think the pace of this digitalization acceptance that got changed after this pandemic? Do you think there is, like Mr. Arundhati mentioned, there is an increase in activities towards digitalization? So how do you see the current situation, and going forward, will it really make a shift or a drastic huge increase in those technology adoption?
Shekhar, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to talk to all of you. And just to contextualize my answer to your question, AS Micromatic is India's largest manufacturer of CNC machines. And along with that, we were the first in India to introduce software for what is being called Industry 4 and smart manufacturing today. Now, in terms of how our customers are viewing digitalization or Industry 4 or smart manufacturing, post COVID, there's a very strong uptake to solutions that have instant ROI. By instant, I mean even of the order of weeks. So even if somebody is operating just one shift out of 3, now if there is a way that we can help them operate that shift faster, better, cheaper, then there is a market for that. And if you were to really look at the transition of digitalization itself from the traditional analog craftsmanship skills to a digital craftsmanship skills, we believe that in the months to come, as people accept that there is a need to do more with less, digital solutions will certainly be seen as one of the tools in their toolkit in order to achieve that.
Right. Okay. And going forward, do you think there will be like increased demand for digitalization tools, and is the industry ready to accept those kind of technologies? Do they have the whatever the required infrastructure, the skills, talent required to work on those technologies?
That's a good question. And what we believe is that there is an increased understanding and acceptance of digital tools moving forward. The bottleneck seems to be far more than the funding. It is the ability of their internal teams, especially at the SMB level, to adopt that. So there's a fear in the owner's minds whether, if let's say I invest whatever, 10 lakhs, 5 lakhs, 25 lakhs on any of these, will
internet problem. Yeah, I think there is some internet problem, internet connectivity problem with Mr. Chandrasekhar. I hope it will come back soon. Mr. Chandrasekhar, can you hear us? Hello? I think he has gone offline.
I think he'll come back.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll move on to the next question then. I'll come to Mr. Mishra. So, like Mr. Chandrasekhar mentioned, there has been kind of people are tending to go through new technologies, but they are basically inquiring about the ROI, whether investment in this technology in the current situation will make sense for them or not. So, what next? What kind of changes the manufacturing industry and manufacturers can anticipate going further? And what kind of strategy and approach the industry should think of to respond to these changes and remain competitive?
Right. So this is a very good question, Shekhar. You are able to hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now, first of all, what I would say is that the strategy, right now, if I look at it, our factory is based out of Indore, close to Indore. Now, there are many requests coming from Indian OEMs as well as global OEMs that we need to move the parts from one supplier to another, from China to India, from high COVID zones to low COVID zones, etc., etc. So the strategy for the future, one is that immediate future during the pandemic time and post-pandemic. In immediate future, the organizations which are able to focus on low lead time of development, and also organizations which are able to have very strong flexibility in operations. Like it was told that lockdown can come anytime, etc. So organizations which are agile, organizations where lead times are very small, they will tend to gain in a big way. This is current pandemic situation. Now, readiness to meet the challenges of Industry 4.0 or connected technology, if we go by ROI perspective, then improvements do not happen. It is a progressive journey. All industry people, all people at the helm of affairs have to understand that there is a progress and there's a movement. Once there's a change in technology, results are bound to come. So there'll be a step-by-step progress which industry will have to make as a strategy. First, it has to become a part of the strategy. Like there is a customer acquisition strategy, manufacturing strategy. Similarly, digitization has to be a part of the organization strategy. And ROI is bound to come. Anything which becomes a priority, it will always give you ROI. So there, you can make first progress based on what is your affordability, then second step, third step, fourth step. And more you progress in this journey of digitization, because now this is also the need of the hour, because a lot of remote management you have to do in the current times, and future also this will stay. You will have multiple locations across the globe and one nerve center. So this will be a progressive journey. ROI at initial stage might not come, but long term, this all will lead to a better sustainability and would definitely give you ROI and sustenance in terms of long term. So we have to take step-by-step approach, make digitalization a part of our strategy to start with, and then ROI we will get.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Chandrasekhar is back now.
Hi.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I hope you can hear me as well.
Yes. If you can continue with your comments.
So in terms of the pace of adoption of digital, we believe that it's only going to start accelerating in the months to come. A lot of the SMB segment as well as the corporate segment already have plans in place, and they're probably hoping for their cash flow to improve slightly with respect to where it is today. And they're using this period as a gestation period to really lay the roadmap down for a rapid acceleration in adoption once the cash flows come back.
Okay, right. Yeah, Mr. Athale, so we were talking about the changes which have been happening pre-COVID in the manufacturing sector, and now the pace of new technology adoption might increase provided the corporates are comfortable with the current cash flow situation and the investment strategies. So what do you think, what kind of strategy and approach the industry should think of to respond to these changes and at the same time remain competitive and at the same time conserve the cash?
Three things, because as I mentioned, the current crisis and cash crunch is for limited time. Okay, and you are talking about long-term solutions. So earlier, as I mentioned, the overall impact we should take into consideration whenever you talk about IRR calculations, paybacks. At steady state condition, the numbers will be different. And after disruption, when you are losing the opportunities, or when the supply chain is disrupted and where you are landing into air shipment kind of things, the cost of that is totally different. Okay, so you have to anticipate all these things, because unless and until these factors are not taken into account, the numbers what you will get out of IRR and payback will not make sense, and finally effectively will end up paying much more higher price for that. Okay, so it's a temporary period for next cash crunch and things like that, but obviously industry is realizing that they have to overcome this. Earlier, as I mentioned, on the supply chain, the whole thrust was only on cost competitiveness on supply chain. So that will anyway remain, that will not go away. But at the same time, there is a need for real data analysis, data churning, and predictive analysis in terms of better forecasting. So if you can get those tools, those digital tools, digitally enabled supply chains, so that is going to counter the buffer what you are going to add into supply chain to avoid disruption. So it will be a good combination that already you have focused on your supply chain from cost point of view. Now you are adding some buffer to avoid disruptions. It will not totally eliminate the problems, but at the same time will protect you. And parallelly, you are working on digitally enabled supply chains. So finally, you will get output because of better predictive forecasts or better data analysis. So these tools are anyway important. Now on the shop floor, whether it is use of automated guided vehicles or robots or low cost automation, there is no option other than going for that. Even in our case, right now we are operating with almost 2,700 man-heads in Chakan plant right now, and all our 11 or 12 manufacturing plants are export-oriented units. So there is a big challenge right now. First of all, yes, right now the people availability is there, but skill set is a big problem. So training of the people is a big problem.
Right.
And day by day that is going to go up. The problem in terms of salary hikes, what China faced for last few years, eventually we are going to face the same problem. So we cannot bank only on the low cost manpower availability in India. So it's a matter of few years, then we are going to face that problem. So we have to invest on all these technologies ahead of time if we have to really remain competitive in the market.
Right. Okay. So now we really need to think of something beyond that. Like currently we are seeing there has been probably the increased adoption of digitalization and the new technologies. But what about beyond this phase? That little bit of visualization which we can do based on your experience and your outlook towards the industry. So when the world will become free from the current crisis, it will be post COVID, you can say. So what would be the key drivers for the industry growth, and how will be the scenario at that time? Ms. Arundhati, can you answer that?
Well, we are trying to answer it today. What we are realizing is that we have to educate our customers to think differently, change their mindset from just looking at what's in front of their current problem on a long-term basis. That means even the ROI calculation needs to be looked at on a longer perspective, not right now. Yes, we have to give a ROI of 1 year or 15 months. That's what we promise. But today, customers are not even aware कि भाई 3 महीने बाद क्या होगा, 3 हफ्ते बाद क्या होगा. So you have to kind of give them a balanced viewpoint of all. Also help them cope with the unpredictability that comes in. We can debate here for very long how this is going to work, but frankly, none of us know where it's heading. So one of the things that we are looking at is introducing our entire robotic portfolio of system as a subscription model. That means you pay as you go. It's a completely different way of looking at it. But yes, we are bringing it in because nobody, I think, is going to invest into large scale capital equipment for a long time to come. Everybody is going to conserve, preserve, hold their cash tight to their chest. So at the same time, they're going to demand more and more. So how do you do it? So we are working on that. I think that's what each one of us need to look at. Service at the doorstep at the minimum cost, because digitization isn't cheap. It's expensive. Data analytics for that predictive data, doing the entire gamut, it's a long process. People who are going to be able to start now are never going to match up because they just aren't any more people around them to accelerate the process of digitization. So we are looking at subscription model. We are looking at how we can get them self-sufficient by a very adaptive and agile system. So they can do multiple kind of job as they come their way. I think we all need, all of us need to look at that. It's like this, Zoom is the new normal. Meeting is almost going to be out. So each one needs to look at that concept. So we are right now looking at getting our customer ready for the tomorrow that's coming, because it's definitely coming. With whatever world crisis, India is going to emerge stronger. India is going to be a very strong force, and we need to get our customers, our SMEs, MSMEs, SSIs, all of them ready to deal with this. So our thing is to give them a software-based system which they pay as they use on a subscription basis, give them a system that is agile, give them a system that is very, very adaptive to do multiple kind of jobs. And for that, bring in a lot of collaborations on board. That means under one umbrella, we are creating a large base of collaborative companies, technologies, and software to give them what they want at their fingertips, thinking ahead for them and with them.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Chandrasekhar, what do you think going forward, thinking beyond COVID, like when the world will be free from this virus? Currently, okay, there is a fact that we have to live with the virus, but when the world gets free from the virus and again the business is back to normal, so what do you think how the scenario will be in terms of adoption of technologies? But at the same time, currently, since there is a less manpower available, people are tending to adopt digitalization or new technologies to just compensate the lesser manpower. So how will be the scenario next?
So let me answer this in two parts.
Mhm.
One is we are certainly seeing an instant reaction from a lot of our customers saying that they desire more automation. Now, whatever that means, let's park what automation means to a customer. So their desire is to de-risk their operations from the human side of things. So some of the other panelists talked about how skill sets is an issue, availability of people is an issue, cost could be an issue. Those are things that people feel that automation might help de-risk from. In the course of that automation, certainly digital technologies play a key role. The second part of that is what we are seeing for customers really when they want digitalization, what they really want is the ability to make more profits or produce more or reduce their losses, shop floor operational losses. And from this perspective, we have seen we have more than 20,000 high value machines covered under our digital solutions now. And from the knowledge base that we have found a roughly 80-20 split in terms of the types of issues that really impact profitability and operational efficiency. 80% of them are fairly low hanging in nature. They are also transient and real time, which require real time transparency and real time responses. And now that's not going to go away. There could be in the other 20%, maybe 15% of them are long-term in nature or process in the process or machine or parameters perspective. There could be a small percentage, less than 5%, which are labor oriented. That means something that is genuinely caused by labor or people. So the large focus of digital outputs is going to be on that 80%, which tend to be fairly low hanging in nature. At the same time, the use of technology is becoming more sophisticated to ensure that the adoption becomes simpler and simpler, almost like using an app on an iPhone.
Right.
So that's what we see moving forward. One is on the automation side. The second is on use of digital to really address the 80%, while the 15% or 20% gets addressed by long-term automation.
Okay. So not necessarily the specialized training skills are required for that.
Not necessarily, but to make it easier to consume.
Okay. Since everybody talked about the adoption of digitalization, but the current situation is like people are going for automation or digitalization because there is a manpower crunch. There is a less manpower available, as well as the social distancing norms. And so going further, when the business is in the normal operations, when there is again the demand coming back, you need more products for the consumer. At the same time, consumers are expecting the mass customization. So do you think going forward, this thing will continue, but at that time, probably the manpower available will be much more, because the people who are migrant laborers or who are not going to office because of the pandemic situation, they will suddenly become available. So how will you sort out balance the situation in terms of adoption of technologies as well as the manpower available?
Is that a question?
Yeah, question for Mr. Mishra.
Right. Okay. First of all, it is, very comfortable to imagine a post-COVID scenario. Today, sitting here, if I can imagine a post-COVID scenario, first thing is that it gives me a lot of comfort. That is the starting point of this discussion.
That's true, very true.
Right. So let's hope that we get into that situation and we say that this is
come out
past.
as soon as possible. Yes.
Yeah. So let me tell you that this question starts with a good comfort, I would say. Now, as far as you said that migrant laborers will come back and the scenario of less people will get eliminated, and then you will have more people, and then what happens to automation? First of all, if you look at the growth, which is likely post the COVID scenario, what I feel is that there will be a sector-wise growth. Like if you would have seen that the tractors have come back to growth stage, and last month tractors have grown by 12% compared to last year June. So sector by sector, we will see a lot of recovery based on the way the things move forward. Then what is also happening on the global scenario is that de-risking in terms of region will happen. Like earlier, if all your eggs are in China, you are not bothered. But today, with this COVID scenario, people across the globe are thinking that is it sufficiently de-risked situation in case you have all your supplies from one country. So de-risking or risk mitigation in terms of region will change the scenario. And so there will be a sector-wise demand growth. There will be a de-risking strategy of global companies. And all this put together, and rural demand is still intact. Rural demand, we are not affected by, are still not affected by COVID. It is still intact. So post-COVID scenario, the demand is going to go up. It may sound optimistic, but the demand would be significant. And the need of when the scenario of less people was not there, still industry was moving toward digitization. It is not the question of what will you benefit from digitalization. The question is, what will you lose if you don't get into this way? There are significant losses which you will incur if you don't get into digitization or your organization doesn't take this as a strategy. So step one, what I would say is post-COVID scenario, the demand, there'll be a pent-up demand due to low offtake during this period. There'll be a sector-wise recovery. There'll be a demand which will come to India because of risk mitigation strategy. And if we are agile enough, which we are, I was reading somewhere where people, there was a consultancy firm, a big consultancy firm, which said 90% of companies will have losses in the year of 2020, 2021. But now people are having cash, are breaking even in terms of cash profit. Why? Because there is a agility, a very, very strong agility in this country to retract, shrink if there is a need. So things are getting better. So what I feel is that with the pent-up demand, we will have never a shortage of situation which will be against the digitalization. And the digitalization has to be sold to organization as what you lose if you don't get into it. Manpower numbers, automation is a small view of a very larger framework. So I feel one, post-COVID, there'll be a strong, very, very strong demand, which we saw in 2018-19. Point number two, digitalization is a long-term strategy which organization will have to take. And point number three, we will always need to get better in terms of number of people we hire to make the same product or a more percentage of product. So that continuous focus on efficiency, less people will always happen. So this will all lead to a long-term scope for digitization and a strong growth future for India in the post-COVID scenario. This is what I am actually feeling about it.
Okay. And also with the crisis on the border because of the China and all those things. So do you think there is a scope for more localization and lesser import from China going further? Will it really happen? There has been the announcement from the Prime Minister also to have the Atmanirbhar India. So do you think we are really equipped to have that in the near future?
This question is for whom?
Are we equipped for localization currently?
Right. We are not equipped to that extent for localization from China. There are specific technologies which still are imported from China. It is very good. You know, apps and software we can still get rid of on a temporary basis, but there are real hardcore components and technologies which the entire world is dependent upon China.
Right.
So there can be a progress in that direction, but it is not something which will happen immediately. It may be good in terms of patriotism, and it is very, very fair to expect Atmanirbhar Bharat. But our people from industry have to really do a lot of things to become competitive, good quality at low cost, and come out of this chalta hai attitudes. And if we do that, matter of time when we will have a very strong Atmanirbhar Bharat. But they have been very, very rapid, very, very strong, and they have absorbed technology which we have never been able to. So
Right.
we have to get better. That is the message.
Right.
And it is matter of time, a year, 2 years journey has begun, and we will see a great progress in this journey.
Right.
I'm sure of this.
Yeah, at least the start is there. Some
It
initiatives
is
are
a start, and the thinking has changed.
right.
Now, at least all of us are talking of Atmanirbhar Bharat. We were only thinking that how can we compete with China? Our
Right.
agenda was never that how would we become Atmanirbhar. Now our agenda has changed. And with change agenda, the direction will be different and the work and progress will be different. And it's a matter of time.
Right.
A year, 2 years, but progress has become.
I'll just quickly add one comment
Yes,
on
yes,
this.
sure.
Because as I mentioned, our company, Sigma Electric, is exporting everything.
Yes.
100% export. Okay. So we are exporting almost 180 to 200 million US dollars in US from
Okay.
India. So it is already an example of Make in India program for last many years. And day in, day out, we are fighting with Chinese competitors. Okay. And we had spent enough energy. I had spent particularly time in comparing with China, where our industry is lagging, particularly in our sector, and what is changing in last 20 years. Okay. So I agree with what got said just now. On one side, there is a good opportunity in our hand because of risk mitigation right now, and this is the golden chance. Already we missed multiple chances earlier. Okay. So I think this is our last chance of really breaking this barrier and leveraging whatever is happening because of the external circumstances. At the same time, it is not at all easy, okay, because
Sure.
easy to comment about all these things, but at the same time, the reality is very much different.
Correct.
In many areas which are not in our control, we are nowhere near to what China is doing or Chinese competition is doing. Coming back to your earlier question, because infrastructure suddenly in one day, we cannot change anything. So whether it is infrastructure or the Chinese government support in terms of subsidies, even in the current crisis, the amount of money what they have directly given to the Chinese manufacturers is substantial. Okay, and none of the industry guys in India could get that, and we cannot afford that as well. Okay? So these are the factors beyond our control. But at the same time, since we are fighting with Chinese successfully for many years, one of the prominent thing is productivity improvement, which is in our hand and which we lack generally as Indian industry. So when we talk about digitization, low-cost automation, robotics, there is no option for that. There is no alternative because we are not talking about short-term. What is going to happen right now when the manpower comes back? Manpower will come back, but that's a temporary thing. Eventually, what we are going to do in next 3 years or 5 years. And for that, we have to get prepared today. And all these techniques are going to help us improve productivity. So for whatever good reasons, whether it is union resistance, ROI not making sense, cultural barriers, this is actually a right time of using these tools for improving productivity.
Correct.
And if you use that, there is no issue in terms of breaking China barriers.
Correct.
We are well poised for that.
Okay, right. So I will now open the floor for questions from the audience. If they have any questions, I will just read it out for the speakers. Or maybe I will request the speakers, do you have any questions to each other if you want to make discussion more interactive? Whatever comments or whatever views you have put in. So anybody has any other views commenting on that?
Just to further what Ashutosh said, I'd like to share our experience, as CNC machine manufacturers supporting a fairly diverse set of customers, right from the OEs to large tier 1s to tier 2s, all the way to SMEs. What we have seen is along the lines of what Ashutosh said, productivity on the shop floor is really the crucial aspect for any Indian manufacturers to scale up or eventually get better at beating, China is just one country, but eventually being able to compete with any country around the world. And it really starts with getting the basics right. And that's where the initial wave of digitization, if we focus on that, I believe we can unleash anywhere from a absolute 20% to as high as 40% rise in productivity on the shop floor. This has been our experience.
Okay.
And as borne out by literally hundreds of customers that we have seen across verticals, across sizes, across industries that they serve, just about across the board.
Right.
I have also seen it that customers who sat on the fence of doing it, today they see a huge opportunity to get ready. They realize they have an advantage with whatever situation that's happening with China. And they realize they need to step up. They realize that they need to do it. I've never seen the amount of people that have connected with me in last 3 months like I have seen it before. I had to chase virtually nobody. They are coming back to us saying, we want this. You told us then, can we get this? And can we get this? Which is a great thing. That means they're thinking digital. They are thinking analysis. They are thinking global. They are thinking beyond the small workshops that they had. And they're realizing that the digitalization enables them to cope with the coming times. And I think they all also realize that if they are able to survive or thrive in like 6 to 8 or 9 months, the world is there for them to take. So each one, I'm realized, I see it. There is a tremendous amount of involvement from ground to the management where people are coming forward for discussions. We don't have to chase anybody for Zoom calls. Zoom calls are getting now more and more penetrated across the organization when they sit talking to us. It didn't happen before. The owner had to say, isko bulao, usko bulao, baat karne do. And they were more worried about, oh my God, am I going to lose my job? It's not happening anymore. I think that's a...
that's a good sign.
Yeah, that's a great sign for us. Yes.
Yeah, okay. There is one question there. Would our country be able to get a share of the investment moving out of China, considering the intense competition posed by other Asian countries like Vietnam or South Korea? Anyone would like to answer?
So I can take
tough
that.
question.
Yeah, it's like competing with Vietnam and South Korea and other Asian countries.
So maybe I can try to take that from my perspective of being on the CII, National Manufacturing Council. Over the last 4 months, we've had almost 1,000 companies approach the government to potentially come into India. But again, there are gating issues which will not ensure 100% hit rate on that. But I believe, especially in the areas where there's a higher engineering content required, India would be a natural fit, not necessarily in the very low cost volume manufacturing, which perhaps we are not able to compete with Vietnam for a variety of reasons, but certainly things that require a much higher engineering content or a skill set, we see those companies certainly wanting to come to India as a long-term strategy.
Right.
So what is CII how do you perceive it? They want to come in. Will we be ready for them? Are we ready to get them in? Are we ready to finance them? What's happening there? That's question to you.
Unfortunately, a lot of this starts to end up becoming a state issue. For example, land becomes a state issue. So, I mean, that's not the only thing, but then now there's also a whole lot of discussion on labor loss. So while the center and CII's outreach ensures a lot of interest coming in as a funnel, the implementation becomes a function of the state. So what CII is trying to do is work with the states to ensure that there is sort of a internal competitiveness ranking, which states can actually compete against each other and ensure that they are able to de-bottleneck some of the issues that currently come up as bottlenecks for companies to come in.
So you think we will get money? You think our MSMEs, which are right now actually choking with no revenues for 3 months or whatever, you think they would get money? You think there's a possibility? Because
if they are in the higher engineering skilled category, I'm hopeful. But if it is one more a volume game, I'm less hopeful about that.
Yeah, because I don't see it with my customers. They're struggling. They're struggling to make up in the ranks of being even eligible or whatever. It looks like a steep road, and I keep meeting these government officials, but I keep telling them this isn't going to work if we don't step up to help them. as they are the backbone, you know? Yeah. So yeah, it's a tough
SME as the
one.
backbone, yes. Because they contribute to the huge, currently the revenue to the India's GDP.
Yeah. But it's not like with over 2,000 customers, and it's tough. It's really tough.
Right. Mr. Mishra, you wanted to add something on that?
Yeah. I do agree, and I do understand this limitation in terms of land and any major lot of labor laws, etc. There are, and they are the facts which are there, and probably very soon you will not find things changing overnight, right? But what I also would like to add here is that it will be industry specific. There are industries who would step up, who would reach out to on this challenge, and there are orders which are coming. Now there'll be some industries who will take this charge and they will benefit. It is up to, there'll be specific industries who would not probably step up, but people who step up, they will get the opportunity. Because what I see, like in Madhya Pradesh, a lot of land pooling is happening. Land availability is there can be a land availability in case somebody wants to invest. So there are limitations. There are a lot of constraints which are there in the country, definitely. But there are a lot of innovations which happen in our country. There are a lot of people who want to take some risk, and these are the opportunities. We are, like Ashutosh said, once a lifetime opportunity. We have missed chances, but this time we are further more equipped, and there'll be a lot of support mechanism. And good part of this country is that we all know English. The communication barrier is not there at all. So I feel that despite these constraints of government, etc., there will be a lot of organizations, a lot of companies who would definitely take on this challenge, and India as a country would definitely benefit. To the extent possible, we will see, but this opportunity will definitely come to us, and it has started coming. I can tell you this. There are, despite lockdowns, etc., there are people who are telling you, can you make these parts over next 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, because they don't see things in China getting better. And there is a veil which is there. There's a no transparency there. This would, and here more than 100% transparency looks like it exists. So it will be industry specific. Despite constraints, people will step up to this opportunity. But how much is what we will see with time, but demand is there.
Okay, right. There is another question. It was quite anticipated question. That with the current companies have started using automation and digitalization because the less manpower is available. So going further, when the situation becomes normal, will it generate the non-employment, or people will remain non-employed because there is digitalization?
My take on this, I will just add, and anybody can add. Well, employment mode will change. If today more people are running the machines, there'll be more people who would be feeding data probably, or auto data generation will happen. But there'll be more people who would be working with these logistics company, moving products. So probably the employment of sector will shift. But if India has to be a very strong challenger to any of the China big organizations, automation has to be the order of the day. Automation is not only for saving the man or individual, the salary cost or wage cost. It is for the very high productive utilization of the equipment, and a lot of proactive work on the machine in terms of maintenance, or a lot of proactive work on the entire system. So what I feel is unemployment definitely would not go up. This change in the structure of the country's industry would lead to change in the employment levels of people in various jobs. That is what is bound to happen. But unemployment, I don't see going up. That is my take on this.
Anybody would like to add?
And in addition to what got discussed just now, only one thing is there, because I earlier talked about productivity. Ample opportunities are there in the market to get the business worldwide. Okay, so these tools are going to help us improve productivity. So automatically we are going to fetch more and more business, which will create more employment over here. So it's not a question that just because of automation and digitization, we are going to take away jobs. In fact, more and more business will come.
Okay, that's right.
I think if we are able to get better skilling of people
Mhm.
to more digitalized future, there is a lot of work. So I think it is going to go hand in hand how employment will move forward with better skilling of the workforce that's out there, older workforce or a newer workforce. So I think a lot depends on that, and we are seeing it with our own customers, where they're coming back with number of training modules from us to efficiency. So I think we work this together. I don't see a problem.
Okay. So I mean the job profiles might get changed.
Yeah.
Yes,
Job
yes.
profiles
They'll
will
get
get
more
changed.
efficient and yeah.
And knowledge workers will always be employed, always.
Okay, right.
And for those of you interested, the National Skill Development Council, as well as the
Yes.
Capital Goods Skill Council, has actually developed a set of job profiles that are going to be in the new age, so to speak. I referred to digital craftsmanship. So there's a whole bunch of job profiles that fall under that category. So I would encourage the participants to at some time check that out.
Yes.
Okay, right.
And there are a lot of incentives given for the skilling through the skilling initiative. So I think each one should see it, because we are helping to about 19 universities, colleges with their syllabuses and skilling. And there are loads and loads of options that the government is offering. A lot of private industries have also stepped up with their contributions.
Right.
We just have to do some more research to get there.
You should leverage on those opportunities.
Yes, yes,
Right.
totally. Yes.
Okay, I would like to thank now, because due to interest of time, we'll have to stop here. I'm sure there will be a lot of other thoughts. I would also personally like to discuss more, but due to time constraint, we'll have to stop here. And I would like to thank each of you for your time, making the discussion interactive and putting your thoughts, your analysis, your recommendations, your observations in a nice way, so that to make the discussion very useful. I'm sure the audience who are listening to this discussion, they will take some value out of it and get benefited out of that. So look forward to have some more opportunities with you in future. And
Yes.
thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Everyone. Thanks,
Pleasure.
Thank you for
Shekhar.
organizing this, Shekhar.
Thank
Yes, absolutely.
Thank
you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Have a
Have
good
a
day, all of
lovely
you.
weekend,
Take care.
everybody.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. हॅलो हां बोला ओके
Thank you so much to all our panelists for making time out and being a part of this, being a part of today's event. Just to summarize it shortly, we need to understand and prioritize the important aspects for us in the post-COVID. Now, with the environment and market being volatile all the more, we need to look at digitizing our manufacturing and making it interconnected and create a collaborative working environment. There is now an increased understanding of digital tools, but there needs to be more open-mindedness towards adopting technologies. Remote management is the need of the hour, and it will, the ROI might not be immediate, but it will definitely help everyone in the long run. And digital tools will act as a buffer to manage supply chain pressure in the future. Different approaches need to be implemented, and different approaches need to be implemented to cater to our customers in future. So with this, I would like to thank everyone who, for being present and making it to the end and making this event happen. This includes our esteemed speakers, panelists, and of course, our attendees. I would like to also thank our event partner, Altair, and our technology partner Siemens Industry Software for joining us and making this event a success. Now, before I take your leave, I would like to let everyone know that on the 24th of July, Publish Industry India would be coming up with another event, the Sales and Marketing 4.0, which is on maximizing the outcome now and further. This is especially for the marketing personnel in the industry, and we'll be sending the registration links to you shortly on the same. And I shall see you then. Thank you. Goodbye, and have a good day.